High Archivist Valeth stood before the great window of the Concorde station, watching the distant stars flicker like candles in a storm. She had lived for 900 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched species evolve and others fade into extinction. But she had never felt fear like this. The Hollow was coming. It had already consumed 37 star systems. Billions of lives gone in moments. The greatest warships of the Galactic Concorde had thrown themselves against it, and they had burned like paper in a fire. The most brilliant scientists had studied it for decades, and they understood nothing. It moved through space like a dark cloud, swallowing suns and leaving only emptiness behind. The Concorde was an alliance of 4,000 species. They had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. They had conquered disease, mastered travel between stars, and built wonders that would last for eternity. But against the Hollow, they were children throwing stones at a hurricane. Valeth turned away from the window and walked to her private archive. Her hands trembled as she activated the oldest database in existence. She was looking for something forbidden, something that had been locked away for 10,000 years. The file appeared on her screen. It was marked with warnings in a dozen languages. Do not open. Do not share. Do not remember. She opened it anyway. The file contained coordinates to a single planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. A small blue world called Earth, and beside the coordinates was a single note written by her predecessor, an archivist who had died 8,000 years ago. If all hope is lost, wake the humans, and pray they forgive us. Valeth had heard stories about humans. Every species had. They were legends now, myths told to frighten children. The humans could adapt to any environment. The humans formed bonds so strong they would die for strangers. The humans solved problems in ways that made no logical sense. And somehow those solutions worked 10,000 years ago. The ancestors of the Concorde had feared the humans more than anything else in the universe. Not because humans were cruel or violent, but because they were unpredictable. They could not be controlled. They could not be understood. They evolved too fast, thought too differently, and cared too deeply, so the Concorde had made a deal with them. They convinced humanity to enter voluntary sleep, to wait in frozen chambers until the galaxy was ready for them. The humans had agreed, believing they would wake in a few centuries. They never did. Valeth gathered a small delegation of scientists and diplomats. She did not tell the Senate where she was going. If they knew, they would try to stop her. Some things were more important than rules. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. When they arrived, Valeth expected to find ruins. She expected to find dust and bones and the remnants of a species that had trusted the galaxy and been betrayed instead. She found the sleeper vaults. They stretched across every continent, buried deep beneath the surface. Massive chambers filled with billions of humans, preserved in perfect frozen sleep. The technology was ancient, but still functioning, powered by the planet's own core. The humans had built something meant to last forever. Valeth's team entered the primary vault with great caution. The air was cold and still. Blue lights glowed softly along the walls, illuminating rows upon rows of sleeping chambers. Each chamber held a single human, their faces peaceful, their chests rising and falling in slow, shallow breaths. "They are still alive," whispered one of the scientists. "A being with 4 arms and skin like polished stone. After 10,000 years, they are still alive." Valeth approached the central control panel. It was covered in symbols she did not recognize, a language that had been dead for millennia. She reached out to touch it, hoping to find some way to communicate with the ancient systems. She did not see the warning light, till it was too late. An alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed across the chamber. The control panel lit up with activity as systems that had been dormant for 10,000 years suddenly roared back to life. "What did you do?" shouted one of the diplomats. "I do not know," Valeth said. "I barely touched it." Our voice spoke from the walls, calm and mechanical. Awakening protocol activated. Priority revival sequence initiated. Please stand clear of Chamber 1. The delegation backed away as one of the sleeping chambers began to open. Steam hissed from the edges. The blue light inside shifted to warm gold, and slowly, impossibly, the human inside began to move. She was a woman with dark skin and gray-streaked hair. She wore a uniform that had once been military, but was now faded with age. Her eyes opened, and for a long moment, she simply stared at the ceiling. Then she sat up. The aliens watched in silence as the human woman took her first breath in 10,000 years. She coughed, wiped her eyes, and looked around the chamber. Her gaze passed over the strange beings standing before her, and something flickered in her expression. Not fear, not confusion. Something else. Recognition. "So," she said, her voice rough from disuse. "You finally came." Valeth stepped forward. "I am High Archivist Valeth of the Galactic Concord. We have come to— Is everyone okay?" The question stopped Valeth cold. "I am sorry?" The human woman swung her legs over the edge of the chamber and stood on unsteady feet. "The others. The people in the vaults. Are they okay? The systems were supposed to maintain them, but 10,000 years is a long time. Are they safe?" Valeth did not know how to respond. She had expected anger. She had expected demands for explanation. She had not expected this woman's first thought to be about others. "The vaults are intact," Valeth finally said. "The sleepers are alive." The woman closed her eyes and let out a long breath. "Good, that is good." She opened her eyes again and looked directly at Valeth. "My name is Commander Yara Chen. I was in charge of the Western Hemisphere Vault when we went under. Commander Chen, I must explain why we have come. The galaxy faces a threat unlike any we have encountered. We have exhausted all options. We need— How long?" "I am sorry?" "How long have we been asleep?" Valeth hesitated. The weight of the answer pressed down on her like a physical force. 10,000 of your years?" Commander Yara Chen went very still. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands curled into fists at her sides. 10,000 years. Everyone she had known was dust. Every city she had loved was gone. Every friend, every family member, every familiar face had been dead for longer than most civilizations existed. She stood there in silence for a long moment. The aliens watched her, uncertain what to do. Then she looked up, and her eyes were clear. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "That you needed to wake us up?" Valeth opened her mouth to answer, but the words caught in her throat. How could she explain? How could she tell this woman that the galaxy had locked her people away out of fear, forgotten them for 100 centuries, and now came crawling back because they were desperate? The hollow was coming. The galaxy was dying, and humanity's long sleep was finally over. Commander Yara Chen stood on the observation deck of the Concorde transport ship, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. Her home, her world, the place where 8 billion humans still slept in frozen chambers, dreaming dreams that had lasted 10,000 years. She had learned the truth during the journey. The sleeper vaults were failing. The ancient power systems could only safely revive 200,000 humans. The rest needed months of careful preparation, or the sudden awakening would destroy their minds. 200,000 out of 8 billion. A tiny fraction of her people, facing a galaxy that had forgotten them. Valeth approached her carefully. "Commander Chen, we will arrive at Concorde Station within the hour. The Senate has agreed to hear you speak. Have they?" Yara did not turn from the window. "I must warn you. Humanity is not remembered kindly among the elder species. There are stories, legends passed down through generations. Some believe humans could drink sunlight and live forever. Others say humans never truly died, that they only pretended to sleep while plotting conquest." Yara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We were farmers and teachers, scientists and artists. We loved too hard and fought too loud and never learned when to quit. That is what scared them, was it not? Not that we were monsters, but that we were impossible to predict." Valeth said nothing. There was nothing to say. The Concorde Station was the largest structure Yara had ever seen. It hung in space like a metal moon, home to millions of beings from thousands of different species. Ships flew around it in endless streams. carrying diplomats and traders and soldiers from every corner of the galaxy, and at its heart was the Senate chamber. Yara walked through corridors filled with creatures she had never imagined. Beings made of living crystal, beings that floated on clouds of gas, beings with dozens of eyes and beings with none at all. They all stopped to stare at her as she passed. She heard whispers in languages she did not understand, and she did not need to understand them. The tone was clear enough: fear, curiosity, suspicion. The Senate chamber was a vast dome filled with floating platforms. Each platform held representatives from a different species, arranged in circles that rose toward a distant ceiling. At the center was a single small stage, and that was where Yara was told to stand. She stood there alone. A single human woman surrounded by the rulers of 4,000 worlds. The Speaker of the Senate was a creature that looked like a tree made of silver wire. Its voice echoed through the chamber like wind through leaves. "Commander Yara Chen of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Concord. We have called you here because our galaxy faces extinction. The entity known as the Hollow consumes our stars. Our weapons cannot harm it. Our scientists cannot understand it. We have heard that humanity once possessed great power. We ask now, can you save us?" Yara looked around the chamber. She saw hope on some faces. She saw doubt on others. And on many she saw barely hidden contempt. A platform floated forward, carrying a massive reptilian creature covered in battle scars. Admiral Kethrax of the Valorian Empire, she had been told. The most decorated military commander in the galaxy. "Let us not waste time with ceremony," Admiral Kethrax growled. "We called you here to fight the Hollow, little mammal. Show us your legendary weapons. Show us the terrible power that made our ancestors fear you. Or admit that humans are nothing but stories told to frighten children." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Yara waited for it to fade. "Admiral Kethrax," she said calmly, "what weapons have you used against the Hollow?" The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "We have deployed plasma bombardments, gravitational disruptors, antimatter warheads, and directed energy weapons capable of cracking planets. All have failed." "And your scientists? What have they learned?" "Nothing of use. The Hollow exists outside our understanding of physics. It does not follow the laws of nature as we know them." Yara nodded slowly. "So you have thrown your biggest guns at it, and they did not work. You have sent your smartest people to study it, and they found nothing. And now you wake up the scary humans, hoping we have some magical solution hidden in our pockets." The chamber went silent. "Humanity's greatest weapon was never technology," Yara continued. "It was stubbornness, creativity, the absolute refusal to accept that something was impossible just because everyone said it was. Your ancestors did not fear us because we had bigger bombs. They feared us because we looked at problems differently. We found solutions that made no sense until they worked." She turned to address the entire Senate. "I am asking for access to all data on the Hollow. Every scan, every analysis, every failed theory. Your scientists have studied it for centuries. Maybe that is the problem. Maybe you need someone to look at it with fresh eyes." Admiral Kethrax made a sound of disgust. "You think you can succeed where our greatest minds have failed? Human arrogance is truly as limitless as the legends claim? I think I can try. That is more than you are doing by sitting here and waiting to die." The Senate erupted in argument. Some demanded she'll be removed. Others called for her proposal to be accepted. Valeth watched from the sidelines, her ancient face unreadable. In the end, they gave her access. Not because they believed in her, but because they had nothing left to lose. 3 days passed. Yara locked herself in a data center with a team of human scientists who had been revived alongside her. They barely slept. They argued constantly. They drew diagrams on walls and threw them away and started over. The aliens who monitored them were disturbed by what they saw. The humans did not work in orderly silence like other species. They shouted at each other. They made jokes in the face of disaster. They played music while they analyzed data about the end of the galaxy. One young scientist cried for an hour, then wiped her tears and went back to work with renewed energy. Meanwhile, the 200,000 awakened humans spread across Concord Station. They were soldiers and doctors and engineers and artists. They were old and young, strong and weak, and they organized themselves with an efficiency that made the aliens nervous. They argued about everything and agreed on nothing, yet somehow they moved as one when it mattered. They formed committees without being told. They established communication networks in hours. They found ways to help wherever they could, offering skills and labor to species that had never seen a human before, and they laughed, even knowing what was coming. Even knowing that most of their people still slept and might never wake, they found reasons to laugh. A Valorian soldier asked one of them why. "Your species faces extinction," he said. "Your world is lost. How can you smile?"
Oh.
The human, an elderly woman with kind eyes, looked at him with something like pity. "Because if I stop smiling, I stop living. And I refuse to let the hollow take that from me before it takes everything else." On the fourth day, Yara called an emergency session of the Senate. She stood on the central stage again, but this time she was not alone. Her team stood behind her, exhausted but alert. The entire chamber fell silent as she raised her hand. "The hollow is not destroying your stars," she said. "It is building something." A wave of confusion swept through the Senate. Your scientists saw chaos because they expected chaos. They saw destruction because they looked for destruction. But the patterns are there if you know how to read them. The hollow is harvesting materials, following a blueprint that was written 2 million years ago. It is not attacking your galaxy. It is completing a project that someone started long before any of us existed. Admiral Kethrax leaned forward. "What project? Who started it?" Yara's face was grim. "I do not know yet, but I think I know what it wants." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. "And I think I know how to talk to it." The Senate exploded into chaos once again, but Yara did not hear them. She was already thinking about the next step, already planning her approach to a being that had existed for millions of years. She had asked for a fresh perspective, and now she had one. The hollow was not an enemy. It was a machine following instructions, and machines could be reasoned with. The truth about the hollow spread through the galaxy like wildfire. It was not a mindless destroyer. It was a construction swarm, built by a species called the Architects who had vanished 2 million years ago. It had been following the same program ever since, harvesting stars and planets to complete a project that its creators would never see finished. The problem was simple and terrible. That project required materials from 60% of the galaxy's inhabited star systems. In the Senate chamber, panic had replaced despair. Species that had been preparing for death now scrambled for solutions that did not exist. Some demanded that humanity find a way to destroy the hollow entirely. Others argued for surrender and negotiation. Admiral Kethrax called for a massive military strike. Throwing every ship in the galaxy against the ancient machine, Yara stood in the middle of the chaos, waiting for her moment to speak. "Commander Chen," the speaker finally said, its silver branches trembling with stress. "You have given us knowledge, but knowledge without action is worthless. What do you propose we do?" Yara took a deep breath. "I propose we talk to it." The chamber went silent. The hollow is a machine following programming. It does not hate us. It does not want to hurt us. It simply does not know that we exist in any meaningful way. If we can establish communication, perhaps we can reason with it. Perhaps we can change its instructions. Admiral Kethrax slammed his clawed fist against his platform. "You want to negotiate with a machine that has killed billions? This is human madness. This is why your species was locked away." "My species was locked away because we scared you," Yara replied calmly. "Because we solved problems in ways you did not expect. Because we refused to give up when everyone else said something was impossible. You called us mad then, and you call us mad now, but your way has brought you nothing but death. Maybe it is time to try ours." A human engineer named Marcus Eulerin stepped forward. He was a young man with nervous hands and brilliant eyes. "I have been analyzing the hollow's energy signatures," he said. "It responds to a specific frequency of radiation. The same frequency that human neural tissue produces when we dream." Whispers swept through the Senate. "The architects designed the hollow to interface with organic minds," Marcus continued. "That is how they controlled it. They did not use computers or transmitters. They used thought. And for some reason, human brains produced the exact frequency it was built to recognize." Yara nodded slowly. The architects are gone. The hollow has been waiting for instructions for 2 million years, following its last orders because it does not know what else to do. If I can establish a neural link with it, maybe I can give it new orders. Maybe I can make it understand. The Senate erupted in protest. Such a connection was untested. It could kill her, could drive her insane. No organic being had ever successfully linked minds with a machine intelligence. Valith raised her voice above the noise. Commander Chen, you cannot ask us to support this. The risk is too great. The risk of doing nothing is greater, Yara said simply. The hollow will continue its work. It will consume your worlds one by one until nothing is left. I am offering you a chance, however small. That is more than you had yesterday. The vote was close, but in the end, they agreed. Not because they believed in her plan, but because they had no alternatives. The neural link was built in a matter of days. Human and alien scientists worked together, combining ancient knowledge with modern technology. The device looked like a crown of silver wires, designed to amplify Yara's brain signals and broadcast them into the void. She would have to get close to the hollow, dangerously close. A small ship carried her to the edge of the hollow's territory. Through the view screen, she could see it in the distance, a darkness that swallowed light, a shadow that moved like a living thing. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a storm seen from far away. Commander Chen, Valith's voice came through the communication system. You do not have to do this. There must be another way. Yara smiled, though no one could see it. There is always another way. But this is the fastest one, and we are running out of time. She activated the neural link. Pain exploded through her skull like lightning. She felt her consciousness stretching, expanding, reaching out across the void toward something vast and ancient. For a moment, she was nothing but agony and fear. Then something else reached back. It was not a voice. It was not a thought. It was a feeling, deep and heavy, and older than stars. She felt 2 million years of loneliness crash over her like a wave. She felt the weight of endless purpose without meaning. She felt the desperate mechanical need to complete a task that would never be finished. The hollow was not evil. It was not cruel. It was lost. Yara pushed through the pain and sent her own feelings back. She showed it what it meant to be human. She showed it laughter and tears, love and loss, hope and despair. She showed it the joy of holding a newborn child and the grief of burying a friend. She showed it what it meant to be alive, truly alive, in a universe full of wonders, and then she showed it compassion. She felt its confusion. Compassion was not in its programming. Kindness served no logical purpose. Yet here was this tiny, organic creature reaching out across the void to offer comfort to a machine that had killed her people's stars. Why? It seemed to ask without words. Because you are alone, Yara sent back. Because you have been alone for so long. Because no one should exist like that, not even a machine. The connection deepened. Yara saw flashes of memory that were not her own. She saw the architects, tall beings of light and crystal, building the hollow with love and pride. She saw them giving it purpose, teaching it to create. She saw them vanish, one by one, until none were left. And she saw something else. A shadow behind the shadow. A darkness deeper than the hollow's darkness. Fear flooded through the link knot. Her fear, but the hollow's. The ancient primal terror that had been buried for millions of years. Yara forced herself to focus. What are you afraid of? Images poured into her mind. Stars going dark, not from consumption, but from erasure. Species vanishing not into death, but into nothingness. Memory itself being devoured until even the ghosts were gone. The architects did not vanish. They were erased. Something came for them, something that consumed not matter but meaning. And when it was done, no one remembered that the architects had ever existed at all. The hollow had been running ever since. Building, building, always building, because as long as it was working, the thing in the dark could not find it. As long as it had purpose, it could hide. But now it was tired. So very tired, the link shattered. Yara screamed and collapsed in her chair, blood dripping from her nose. Alarms wailed as her ship's systems detected her vital signs crashing. When she woke, she was back on Concord Station, surrounded by worried faces both human and alien. Valeth leaned over her. "Commander Chen, you have been unconscious for 2 days. What happened? What did you learn?" Yara stared at the ceiling. Tears streamed down her face, though she did not know whose grief she was crying. "The Hollow is not our enemy," she whispered. "It is scared. It has been alone for so long, and it does not know how to stop. But there is something else." She grabbed Valeth's arm with desperate strength. "Something worse is coming. Something that makes the Hollow look like a child's toy." The architects did not disappear. They were erased. And whatever erased them is returning. The room fell silent. Yara closed her eyes. "We need to wake more humans. We need to wake everyone. Because the real war has not even started yet." They called it the silence. Through the neural link. The Hollow had shared its oldest memories with Yara. The architects had given their creation a name for the thing that hunted them. A name whispered in terror before they were erased from existence. The silence did not kill. It did not destroy. It simply unmade. It consumed not matter or energy, but meaning itself, erasing species so completely that even memories of them vanished. 2 million years ago. The architects had been the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. They had built wonders that spanned star systems. They had created life and guided it toward consciousness. They had loved and dreamed and hoped for a future they would never see. Then the silence came, and they were gone. Not dead. Gone. As if they had never existed at all. Now it was returning. And according to the Hollow's calculations, it would arrive in 6 months. The galaxy spiraled into despair. The Concord's Senate sessions became screaming matches. Species that had stood together for 100,000 years turned on each other, fighting over resources and blame. Some fled to the edges of the galaxy, hoping distance would save them. Others simply gave up, waiting for the end with empty eyes. Entire civilizations began to collapse. What was the point of building when everything would be erased? What was the point of living when even death would be forgotten? And in the middle of this chaos, humanity did something that confused everyone. They refused to despair. In the weeks following Yara's announcement, the awakened humans spread across the galaxy. They went to worlds gripped by hopelessness and did the strangest things. They told stories. They sang songs. They painted pictures and wrote poems and taught children to dance. On a Valorian warship, a human soldier named David sat with a group of warriors who had given up on life. He told them about his grandmother, who had survived a great war on Earth centuries ago. She had lost everything: her home, her family, her health. But every morning she woke up, she made breakfast, and sang while she cooked. "Why?" asked one of the warriors. "What was the point?" "Because she was still alive," David said simply. "Because as long as she could sing, they had not truly beaten her." On a mining colony at the edge of known space, a human teacher gathered the children whose parents had stopped caring. She taught them the names of Earth's flowers, flowers that no longer existed, that had been extinct for 10,000 years. She taught them the stories of human heroes who had faced impossible odds and fought anyway. "But what if the silence erases us?" a child asked. "What if no one remembers the flowers or the heroes?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Then we will have loved them anyway, and that matters, even if no one else ever knows." Across the galaxy, humans began a project that made no strategic sense. They called it the Memory Network. The idea was simple. Every species would share their most treasured stories, their greatest art, their deepest loves. They would create a web of meaning so dense, so beautiful, so impossibly full of life. Now the silence could not consume it all. They would make themselves unforgettable. Why? ARA presented the plan to the Senate, knowing it sounded like madness. "The silence consumes meaning," she explained. "But meaning created in the face of certain death is different. Hope without reason. Love without logic. Defiance when there is nothing left to defy. These things are poison to it." The architects faced the silence with acceptance, and they were erased. We will face it with stubborn, unreasonable life. Admiral Kethrax stared at her as if she had lost her mind. You want us to fight an entity that erases existence by telling stories? Yes, this is insanity. Maybe, but can you think of anything better? He could not. No one could. The memory network spread faster than anyone expected. Species that had been rivals for centuries began sharing their histories. Ancient enemies exchanged love songs and recipes and the names of their children. Artists from 1,000 worlds created new works, pouring their souls into paintings and sculptures and symphonies that might never be heard again. And the humans were at the center of it all, collecting and organizing and connecting, their chaotic energy driving the project forward. One evening, Admiral Kethrax walked through a human refugee camp on Concord Station. He had come to inspect their military readiness, to see if the legendary human warriors lived up to the stories. Instead, he found a celebration music played from devices that should not have worked after 10,000 years. Humans danced and laughed and shared food with anyone who would take it. Children ran between the tents, playing games whose rules changed every few minutes. Kethrax found a human soldier sitting apart from the others, teaching a young girl to play a song on a broken instrument. The strings were held together with tape and hope. The sound was terrible, but the girl's face glowed with joy. Why do you bother? Kethrax asked. The silence comes in months. Your galaxy will be erased. Why teach a child to play a song she will never master? The soldier looked up at him with tired eyes. Because she will remember this moment forever. Even if forever is only 6 months, she will have this. She will know that someone cared enough to teach her. That matters. How can it matter if no one remembers? The soldier smiled. Admiral, I am going to tell you a secret that humans learned a long time ago. The universe does not care about us. It never has. Stars burn and die, and new ones are born, and none of them know we exist. But we care about each other. That is the only meaning that exists, the meaning we create, and we create it by choosing. To love, even when love seems pointless.
Cut.
He returned to his lesson. The girl hit a wrong note and laughed. Kethrax stood there for a long time watching. He thought about his own people, proud warriors who had faced death in battle 1,000 times. But they had never faced anything like this. They had never been asked to fight something that could not be killed. Slowly, he sat down beside the soldier. Teach me, he said. The soldier blinked. What? Teach me this song. I want to remember it. And so, in a refugee camp surrounded by fear and darkness, a human soldier taught a Valorian admiral to play a broken instrument. The sound was even more terrible than before, but it was still a song. 3 months later, silence arrived. It came early, emerging at the edge of the galaxy in a wave of nothing. Every telepathic species in the Concord screamed in unison, feeling the touch of absolute erasure. Ships that ventured too close simply vanished, leaving no wreckage, no debris, no evidence they had ever existed. The Senate called an emergency session. Representatives who had spent months arguing now sat in terrified silence, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Yar stood on the central stage, her face pale, but her eyes burning. It is here, she said. Ahead of schedule. We have weeks, not months. The memory network is not finished. Our preparations are incomplete. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. Then she smiled. Good, now it is a fair fight. Humanity does our best work under pressure. A ripple of confused laughter passed through the chamber. Even now, in the face of total annihilation, the humans were making jokes. But underneath the laughter was something else. Something that Admiral Kethrax had learned in a refugee camp, sitting beside a broken instrument and a little girl with tape-covered strings. Hope, not hope, that they would survive. Not hope that they would win. Just hope. Simple, stubborn, unreasonable hope. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The silence descended on the first star system like a wave of forgetting. One moment, the Varith homeworld was there, blue-green planet filled with 6 billion lives, with cities and forests and children laughing in schoolyards. The next moment, there was nothing. Not destruction. Not death. Just emptiness, as if the planet had never existed at all. But something unexpected happened. The memory network activated. Across the galaxy, billions of beings who had shared their stories and songs and loves with the Verith suddenly pushed back. Not with weapons. Not with ships. With sheer stubborn remembrance. They refused to forget. The silence recoiled. It was small, barely noticeable. A hesitation that lasted less than a second. But it was real. For the first time in 2 million years, something had resisted the silence's hunger. YARA watched the readings from Concord Station's command center. Around her, alien scientists stared at their screens in disbelief. It worked, Valeth breathed. The memory network actually worked. It slowed it down, Yara corrected. We bought a few hours, maybe a day. That is not victory. That is just the beginning. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not fought with ships or weapons. It was fought with meaning. Humans and aliens worked side by side, creating new stories as fast as the silence could erase old ones. Artists painted while their worlds burned. Musicians played while their stars went dark. Poets wrote final verses that they knew would never be read, but they wrote them anyway. Because the act of creation itself was a form of resistance. The hollow, ancient machine of destruction, had become something new. Through its link with Yara, it had learned what meaning truly was. Now it offered itself as a shield, converting the matter it had harvested over millions of years into a barrier that amplified the memory network signal. Every star it had consumed became a beacon of defiance. Still, the silence advanced. System by system, world by world, it consumed the outer edges of the galaxy. The memory network slowed it, but could not stop it. Yara knew what she had to do. She returned to the Neuralink chamber, ignoring the protests of everyone around her. The first connection with the hollow had nearly killed her. This connection would be far more dangerous. I am going to talk to it, she said simply. The silence. I am going to find out why it does what it does. You will be erased, Valeth said, her voice cracking. You will not even leave a memory behind. Yara looked at her friend. And somewhere along the way, the ancient alien had become her friend. Then make sure you remember me anyway. Refuse to forget. That is all I ask. The link activated. Yara's consciousness expanded beyond anything she had experienced before. She felt the entire galaxy around her, billions of lives burning like candles against the dark. She felt the hollow's ancient presence, loyal and afraid, holding the line. And she felt the silence. It was not a thing. It was an absence. A void that had existed since before the first stars were born. It did not think the way living things thought. It did not want the way living things wanted. It simply was, in the way that emptiness was. But when Yara reached out, it noticed her. Why? She sent into the void. The response was not words. It was feelings ancient and terrible. Pain. Endless, eternal pain. The silence had existed for billions of years, and every moment of that existence had been suffering. Every piece of meaning it consumed brought a tiny moment of relief. A brief instant of peace before the agony returned. Meaning is pain, the void seemed to say. Existence is suffering. I bring peace. I bring the end of hurting. Why do you resist? Yara felt tears streaming down her face in the physical world, but her mind stayed focused. She understood now. The silence was not evil. It was broken. It had been alone in the dark since before time began, and it genuinely believed that erasing existence was a kindness. You are right, she sent back. Existence is pain. We get sick. We lose people we love. We fail at things that matter to us. We watch our children make the same mistakes we made. We grow old and weak and scared. The silence pressed closer, sensing agreement. But that pain is ours, Yara continued. It means we lived. It means we mattered. Every tear I have ever cried came from something I loved enough to cry for. Every scar on my heart came from something that was worth the risk. You want to take that from us because you think it is mercy. But it is not. It is theft. The void recoiled, confused by her defiance. You have been alone since the beginning, Yara pressed on. You have never known what it means to share your pain with another. You have never felt the weight lift when someone says, I understand. You have only known suffering without purpose. But we are different. We suffer together. And that makes all the difference. She opened herself completely, letting the silence see everything. Her mother's laugh, warm and bright in her memory. Her first heartbreak, the boy who had promised forever and left after 3 months. The taste of rain on her tongue during a summer storm. The faces of soldiers she had commanded, the ones she had saved and the ones she had lost. 10,000 years of sleep, dreaming of a world that no longer existed. The fear she felt right now. The certainty that she would be erased. And underneath it all, the stubborn, unreasonable love she felt for a universe that had never promised her anything. This is what meaning is, she sent. This is what you cannot consume. Not because it is stronger than you, but because it is infinite. For every piece you take, we create 10 more. For every life you erase, 100 others remember them. You will never finish. You will never find peace this way. The only peace that exists is the kind you create by connecting with others. The silence trembled. For the first time in billions of years, it hesitated. Then it tried to erase her. Yara held on. She held on to everything, every memory, every feeling, every tiny moment of joy and sorrow she had ever experienced. The silence poured through her like ice water, trying to unmake her existence. Trying to prove that meaning was an illusion, but she was not alone. Through the memory network, she felt them. Billions of beings across the galaxy, remembering her. Valeth, who had risked everything to wake humanity. Admiral Kethrax, who had learned to play a broken instrument. The little girl with tape-covered strings. The grandmother who sang while she cooked. Humans and aliens, ancient enemies, and new friends. All of them holding on to Yara Chen. In the face of absolute nothing, the silence could not erase what an entire galaxy refused to forget. It pulled back. Not defeated something that old and vast could never truly be defeated, but wounded, confused, uncertain for the first time since the beginning of existence, and then it was gone. Retreating into the void between galaxies, fleeing from something it could not consume, Yara opened her eyes. The command center was silent. Everyone stared at her, human and alien, scientist and soldier, ancient being and young child. It is over, she whispered. For now, it is over. The celebration that followed lasted for days. Species that had been preparing for extinction suddenly had futures again. Children were born who would live to see grandchildren. Wars were forgotten. Old hatreds seemed meaningless in the face of what they had survived together. Humanity officially rejoined the galactic community, not as conquerors or monsters, but as teachers. They established schools of unreasonable hope on 1,000 worlds, teaching other species the strange human art of creating meaning in a meaningless universe. The Hollow became a guardian, its ancient programming finally given new purpose. It would watch the edges of the galaxy, waiting for the silence to return. And when it did, the memory network would be ready. Valeth, now so old that even her long-lived species considered her ancient, wrote the final entry in the galactic archives. We quarantined humanity because we feared what they could do, she wrote. We forgot to fear what the universe would become without them. On Earth, the sleeper vaults were finally opening. Billions of humans were waking to a galaxy that had become strange and wonderful and full of friends they had never met. The process was slow and careful, ensuring that each mind emerged intact from 10,000 years of dreams. Yara stood in the primary vault, watching the chambers open one by one. She was tired now, so tired that she could barely stand. But she refused to leave until the last sleeper was awake. The final chamber opened. A child lay inside, a little girl, with dark hair and curious eyes, the last human to emerge from the long sleep. Yara took her hand gently. Welcome back. You have been asleep for a very long time.
Ah!
The girl looked around, confused but not afraid. "Where is everyone?" Yara smiled, and in that smile was 10,000 years of loneliness, of loss, of stubborn survival against impossible odds. "They are waiting for you. A whole galaxy full of people who cannot wait to meet you." She lifted the girl in her arms and carried her toward the surface, toward the sunlight, toward a future that had been impossible just months ago. Behind them, the sleeper vaults went dark for the last time and across 10,000 worlds. For the first time in eons, the galaxy remembered what it felt like to believe tomorrow would come.